Hey guys, today I'm here with an on my shelf video and I'm honestly so excited to film this. I have wanted to film one of these videos since I first saw it in my subscription box, and I haven't because up till now I haven't been living with my full collection of books, but I'm currently back at my parents' house, which means that every single book I own is actually somewhere in this room. So I thought what better video to film than an on my shelf tag. If you're somehow unfamiliar with this tag, basically what you do is get people to give you two numbers, one that corresponds to one of your bookshelves and one that corresponds to a book on that shelf. So this is a really great way to pick out books that you own but might not talk about on your channel if it weren't for this tag. Before we get into the tag, let's talk about my shelf situation a little bit. Like most people on BookTube, I own more books than I have shelf space, so I have had to improvise a little. The shelf that currently houses my Tolkien collection, my classics, and my nonfiction is actually not a shelf at all. It's a doll changing table that I've owned since I was about 4 years old. The shelf behind me is a very odd mix of crime fiction, fantasy, middle grade, manga, and young adult novels, and the wire shelf next to that is primarily literary fiction, though there are short story collections, poetry, and plays on that shelf as well. Okay, we've gone over shelves, now let's get into the tag. When I decided to first film this video, I took to Twitter asking for shelf coordinates, and Geraldine from Starian72 was kind enough to send me some. The first set of numbers she gave me was shelf 2, book 5, and for me that was a Penguin collection of Greek tragedy. When I was an undergrad, I took part in my university's Great Books program, and one of the courses that all freshmen in the program had to take was called Greek and Roman Literature. So this was actually one of the first books that we read for that class. This has plays by Euripides, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Aristophanes, and there's actually even some stuff in here by Aristotle. I have to admit that aside from Oedipus Rex, I really don't remember most of the plays in here, but I do remember thoroughly enjoying reading this. They're actually quite funny, and oddly enough, I enjoyed the tragedies more than the comedies because I found the tragedies more comic. The next set of numbers that Geraldine gave me was shelf 3, book 3, and I actually changed up how I counted some of the books just to make sure that I wasn't repeating authors or anything, and the book that I picked from shelf 3 was Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I have a very complicated relationship with this book. It's something that I read for the first time in high school and then again in undergrad, and I just remember this as one of the first books that I read and thought, this is seriously weird and I have no idea what's going on. And interestingly enough, this is probably one of the physical books that I own that I have the strongest attachment to for a couple of reasons. First of all, check out the cover. I think this is absolutely fantastic, and I haven't seen that many versions of Moby Dick that have this mask on the front. The second reason I'm particularly attached to this book is that this was the copy that I read in both high school and undergrad, and my brother read it, so it's chock full of annotations, and I folded pages and highlighted things, and you can just really tell that this was something that I was so confused by and trying desperately to understand. The last set of numbers that Geraldine gave me was shelf 2, book 9, and for me that was another Penguin classic. This is Lazzari de Tormes and the Swindler, two Spanish picaresque novels, and I apologize for my crappy pronunciation. A picaresque novel is basically a novel that follows two very unlikely heroes. So for example, think Don Quixote. And sadly that's kind of all I remember about this book. I believe we read both the novels in here. I remember one of them was kind of shocking, that it was a little bit grotesque. Like I believe there was like some bathroom humor and stuff that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, I just remember I read this for a very small seminar course. There were like 7 people in my class, and we read the weirdest collection of things that I honest to goodness could not tell you what the class was called or what the theme was supposed to be. Michael from Michael Reads was also kind enough to send me 3 coordinates, and the first one that he sent me was shelf 1, book 7, and for me that was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know why I find that so hard to say, J.R.R. Tolkien. You guys know what The Hobbit's about. I've talked about it before, pretty much everybody's talked about it before, but a fun fact is that this is actually my 4th copy of the book. I first heard the story of The Hobbit when I was in 4th grade. I went to a school where we did a lot of art, and my teacher at the time, my 4th grade teacher, read this out loud to us while we were, I believe we were studying geography or something, so while we were coloring our maps, he read this out loud to us. The whole class ended up loving The Hobbit so much that my teacher then wrote his own play version of the story, and I was actually cast as Balin. I remember my one line was, "More beer, please." The second set of numbers that Michael sent me was shelf 6, book 3, and that was Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is of course the third book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is a futuristic fairy tale retelling series. I've actually only read the first 2 books. I haven't read this one yet, but I have read and reviewed those, so I will link that video down below. I've really enjoyed this series so far, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't picked this one up, but because the 4th book, Winter, is supposed to be coming out relatively soon, I will probably just wait to read this until Winter comes out, and then I will probably go back and just marathon the whole series. And the last set of numbers that Michael gave me was shelf 4, book 4, and for me that was Star Wars Labyrinth of Evil by James Luceno. Author names get me every time. This is pretty much a direct prequel to episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and of course follows Obi-Wan and Anakin as they fight in the Clone Wars. It starts off with the 2 Jedi Knights being sent to the planet Nemoidia to pick up or capture one of the Sith's allies, and they end up stumbling upon this piece of intelligence that could possibly shift the tide of the war. I do remember that I enjoyed this well enough. It's definitely not my favorite Star Wars fiction. I say that like I've read a ton of Star Wars fiction. I haven't, but if I was gonna pick a favorite adult Star Wars fiction that I've read so far, I would say Rogue Planet by Greg Bear, which is set in between episode 1 and episode 2. I think that's probably my favorite that I've read so far. I did read this. I do remember liking it, but I probably should go back and reread this maybe before the new Star Wars comes out in December. So those are some of the books on my shelves, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video because it was a ton of fun to make. We actually didn't get to this shelf over here at all, so if you guys are interested in seeing more of these on my shelf videos, please leave me some coordinates down below and I will make one in the near future. I will list all of the numbers that I was given in the description box below, so check that out if you want to make one of these videos and need some numbers yourself. But that's all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Bye! I don't know why I've started singing my goodbyes. A kind of future